Welcome to the Sentient Sky, a podcast on astrology, the cycles, and sacred intelligence.
Presented to you through a Southern Hemisphere lens by Yvonne Wildheart and Rebecca Holly. Hello, I am Rebecca Holly.
And I am Yvonne Wildheart, and welcome to the Sentient Sky podcast, episode 3. Today we're going to be talking about the astrological forecast for June 2024. We're looking at transits and patterns and the energies that will be coming up and working through us and speaking to us throughout the month of June. We are recording this on Wednesday, the 29th of May, 2024 at 12:30 Australian Eastern Standard Time.
And some of the big things happening this month that we're going to look at include the Venus and Mercury Cazimi in Gemini.
We'll be talking about Mars ingress into Taurus.
Some of the Saturnian conversations taking place as several planets move through mid-Gemini into a square with Saturn.
We'd be talking about the Mercury Cazimi and the Mercury and Venus ingress into Cancer.
And we're also going to look at the winter solstice chart for the 21st of June, which is Southern Hemisphere specific.
And full moon in Capricorn. And at last, at the very end, we're going to be talking about Saturn's retrograde, which is happening on the 30th of June to finish off with. So to begin, we're going to start with our invocation. So if you're feeling called, I invite you to close your eyes and take a deep breath. And as I light our candle that will hold us throughout our reading today, and as we spiral from the center of our being, the void space within our very cells and our earthly bodies, we open up to your ever-expanding consciousness, portal of galactic wisdom, knowledge, and awareness. We call for full illumination of our unique universal map, our imprint of time and space. We call the stars, the planets, and all the spaces in between to speak through us and to us with crystalline clarity. May this transmission of galactic proportion shift us through the veils, expanding us beyond the realms of infinite creation. May we feel safe and held as we transmit this cosmic coding through our earthly vessels in service to the greater good of all beings, as we deeply remember that we are galactic citizens, ever-evolving conduits of the cosmic matrix, fulfilling our soul's mission and our beloved Earth at this time, and so it is, and blessed be.
And so it is.
And so it is. Welcome.
Welcome, everybody. And so a little bit of housekeeping. All of the transits that we talk about are based on Australian Eastern Standard Time. So you can adjust your time if that's not your time zone, but we're very excited to be bringing you Southern Hemisphere specific charts and information. To discern whether or not what we're talking about or particular planetary influences are important for you, keep in mind what your sun sign is, your moon sign, and your rising sign. These will be 3 sensitive points that will be particularly sensitive to the transits that we're talking about.
And just remember to allow this to work through you and to speak through you. Some may resonate, some may not, but don't be discouraged by the language we use. Just listen to the messages that are coming through and speaking to us in between. And you can connect to us on the Sentient Sky Patreon, where you can bring all your questions or comments. We'd love your feedback. If you're listening to this on YouTube, press like, thumbs up, make a comment. We would love to connect with you more.
Yeah, definitely. That is one of the most beautiful things is the community that we co-create by participating together like that. And so before we jump into talking about June, we're going to reflect a little bit on some of our own experiences for May and with some of the astrology of the month that has been. Yvonne, did you want to get started?
Yeah, absolutely. So probably the biggest thing for May that was a standout for me was just that beautiful Sagittarius full moon that happened not that long ago, actually, just last weekend. And what I loved about this full moon is it just felt so expansive and delicious, especially with that Venus that was conjunct Jupiter and trined Neptune. And what I really took away from it, actually, especially with that trine Neptune that's sitting on that last 29 degrees of Pisces, the very last degree. And we're going to come back and talk about this. The last degrees of the zodiac is just the appreciation I felt for everything and everybody around me, and just really witnessing, my friends and my family, and just the environment that I was in, just with so much love, and just really seeing people, I think, in their beauty. It was just so sweet. I really love that Sagittarius full moon. That was awesome.
It was really special, wasn't it? My experience of it didn't quite start out that way, though. My experience of it was that morning was the really like manic, frenetic, high energy. It took a little while for it to settle in. And one of the ways that I unpack that in my own chart is that I have 4 planets in Sagittarius. So when something like a full moon is happening, there are a lot of areas in my life that can show up in, which sometimes just looks like a lot going on. And so for the beginning of the day, it took me a little while to ground and feel settled. But by midday, I listened to a podcast and happened to catch one of my mentors, Jimmy Wollumben, doing a live call about neurodivergence and depathologizing neurodivergence. And as someone who is only very slowly recognizing my own divergent brain and self, I had some serious epiphanies around how just how my body works and how my brain works, and how there are lots of things that I've been very ashamed of or critical in myself that are actually just really natural parts of who I am. And I had, this really like bust open moment of seeing myself more clearly under this divergent languaging. And that was sort of what that full moon really brought through for me.
Yeah, we should actually call this podcast the Sagittarius Stallion podcast, because both Becky and I have both 4 planets in Sagittarius. So no wonder we both were attracted to talking about the Sagittarius full moon, even though there was so much other things going on in May. But yes, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. Feeling that Mars and Aries too, that Mars ingress in Aries, that was pretty big, because that was in my 10th house of career and purpose. And all of a sudden I have so much to do. It was just like, it's time. It's like, as soon as that Mars went into Aries, it's like, it's game on. There's things to do. There's people to see, things to put on this podcasting and releasing courses, and everything just went up a notch. And all of a sudden there's like a massive list of things to do. So that Mars ingress into Aries has been like, oh, it's game on now. Let's go, let's go, let's go. So that's been interesting to witness as well.
High energy in the 10th house.
Yes.
For me, Mars into Aries was an ingress into my 9th house, which is the house of higher education and wisdom, but also of long distance travel. And I actually had to cancel a trip that I was supposed to take over that time. I was supposed to be going to beautiful wise women gathering in New South Wales. But my partner got really like hit by a bad virus and was like bedbound for days, and I had to cancel my trip. So thinking of like Mars disrupting plans, or kind of like severing that plan in my 9th house of, what for me is long distance travel, like going on a plane is long distance travel. And yeah, I just had to cancel that really last minute and show up for my Mars ruled partner, who is a Scorpio sun. And so yeah, Mars in Aries had a really clear delineation there. But I've also just been feeling warm in my body. Like the moment Mars ingressed into Aries, I just noticed more heat in my body in general, which was interesting to notice.
Yeah, it's so interesting how the transits can speak through us in such a physical sense, when you realize, when it's affecting body temperature and the way we move through the world. And this is the beauty of astrology, because when we know what is coming, we can learn and use the tools to help navigate that time. So if you know that you're coming up for a big Mars transit, what can you do to support that, so you don't hurt yourself, for example, or, to move so fast that you trip and really injured. Yeah. So it's really interesting to know the astrology and then go, well, how's it affecting me personally? And that's why it's really good even if you just have your natal chart with you during when you're listening to something like this, and to just point out on your personal chart where these transits are affecting you and what areas of your life, it will help greatly. I mean, this is why we do this, because we find it beyond amazing to help us navigate through life.
Yeah, very much so. And even just with that little example of that excess heat in the body, like I've been following astrology long enough now to be able to look at that and go, oh, that's a contributing factor to that. And it just makes it like something that I then don't have to worry quite so much about or like overthink. Like sometimes I can just go, oh, that's related to that. And helps sort of flesh out my understanding. And it'll be interesting to see once Mars is in Taurus, if or how much that shifts. And yeah.
Okay, so let's move on. Overview for June. So the key words that we've come up with is glimpse of the future, especially as the planets all move into the early degrees of Gemini. Quickening.
Yeah.
So feeling that quickening that's happening with it's just everything's on the move at the moment, and everything's happening, especially as we move into that Gemini season. It's like quick, 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 happen, move, move, move. You mentioned
Yeah, and I think,
processing.
oh, sorry. Yeah, I think that ability to like analyze and communicate the new information that's coming up at this time too. And part of where I'm feeling that quickening is in the lead up to winter solstice. It's like, what do I need to get done so that I can really put my tools down towards the end of the month? And so yeah, it's as Yvonne and I were saying earlier, it's like lots of tabs open, multiple screens happening, 3 conversations at once, like just lots of like surface little things moving all at the same time.
Absolutely. And by the end of the month, when start to move into that Cancerian season, it's like setting up the structures for deep rest. As the planets move into the square, so as planets move into Cancer, they're going to be squaring Saturn, and that um, encouragement to lean into the structures that serve us for rest and rehabilitation and nourishment that Cancerian energy sort of brings to us. What do you need it just feels like housekeeping, not to go Virgo on it, but it's like that setup for what do you need to rest in the arms of the Great Mother? And this is what Gemini season's really good for is, yeah, let's like get the house clean. Let's finish off some projects before in that winter solstice period, so we can come into those early winter solstice energies, which is the dreaming space to be able to, sit and rest without feeling the need to rush off and do anything, to dream the good dreams, because what we will see over the next 6 months and 12 months, there's lots of big changes happening. This feels like the setup for that. And so if we can get to a place after winter solstice and to allow the dreaming to happen without worrying about, that big pile of stuff that's in the cupboard that needs to be cleaned, which is my job. But just thinking of that, and it's like, what do you need? What structures do you need to allow that deep rest towards the end of the month? So it's really important.
Yeah, agreed. All right, so I think our first chart that we're going to look at for June is the Mercury conjoining Jupiter. So let me share my screen of that with you all. Now, does that cover that up like that? Can you still see the whole chart, or is a part of the chart
No, you
missing?
can see the whole chart.
Okay, good. Thank you. So Mercury ingresses into Gemini on the 3rd of June at 5:37 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. And we can see that here with Mercury's sigil at 00 degrees and 00 minutes of Gemini.
Yes, this joins the Gemini party. Mercury in its home sign of Gemini. This feels like what we said the very first bit of the overview in June, this feels like the quickening, Gemini, Mercury in Gemini is go. It's collecting all the information, it's doing the process, and it's moving, it's talking, it's like, it feels like this movement, especially right conjunct that Jupiter is like the expansion of that. It actually almost feels a little bit overwhelming, to be honest, just looking at that with Jupiter there. It's like this expansion of what Mercury brings in its home sign. What does it look like when the messenger is at home, feeling free to move, and then expanded in the spotlight of that? It feels busy.
Yeah, and like, yeah, as you were saying, like Jupiter will amplify and make bigger and more beautiful the things that it's near. And Mercury enters Gemini, just shy of 2 degrees away from Jupiter. And so that feels like a really grand fanfare and like a real welcoming for Mercury entering into that space. And to have had Jupiter, the Sun, and Venus all kind of, maybe it's like a surprise party for Mercury, actually, because it's like
Surprise,
Sun,
we're all
Venus,
here.
hello, they're here. It's like Sun, Venus, and Jupiter have all already entered that space, and now here is Mercury who rules Gemini. Gemini, Mercury who rules. Who I can't say it now.
You're moving so fast. I think that's
Yeah.
exactly what it is. It's Gemini, because it's we're moving so fast that we can't even get our words out properly, because everything's just like,
No, but from now on, it will be Mercury reeling Gemini, is what's going on over here. And yeah, this is one of the places that Mercury is most comfortable. So Mercury's domiciles or homes are both Gemini and Virgo. And so this is a place that mercurial things like communication, the collecting and analyzing of data, interactions, and all different forms of exchange are very much ruled by that Gemini Mercury. So this is a time where that all gets to be really alive and accessible.
Yeah. And it feels like Taurus season feels such a distance away now. Like now that
Yeah.
Mercury is in Gemini, that slow fixed Earth feels so far away, even though the moon has just moved in there, which is lovely. But I think having now four planets like the sun, Venus, Jupiter, and Mercury all now in that mutable air. It's just like it's on, it game on now. And also with Mars still in its home sign in Aries, like that's really, really busy. Also, I just wanted to highlight that this also is making a trine. So Jupiter is just coming off the back of its trine, only a couple of, like, not long, is it? Off its trine with Pluto down here at 1 degree and 52 minutes of Aquarius. This is really interesting because Mercury is also the messenger to the underworld, and it's having this direct, easy flow conversation that has been expanded with the underworld, with Pluto here. So what it feels like, this moving through, or even exactly what we said before, is that processing information from these places that sit within us to see what we need to shift and move to be able to move through this Gemini season, more easily perhaps. But there's a conversation happening with Mercury being the messenger through the underworld and going to the underworld to say what needs to happen here, and to bring it back for us to process and to analyze and to be able to work through it.
Do you know what this actually feels like to me? It feels like right now Gemini is a newsroom,
Yeah.
right? And the you've got the Sun and Venus and Jupiter all in this newsroom, and they've been waiting for Mercury, who has the scoop from the underworld.
Mm.
And so it kind of feels like Mercury then coming in with that below ground information, which can then be disseminated and shared through the lenses of Jupiter's truth and sacred wisdom, through the lens of harmony and beauty with Venus, and then also through the lens of light and life giving with the Sun, and through
Mm,
individual and collective radiance, like Mercury, and particularly because it's a trine with Pluto, it's more a sort of a supportive aspect. Like
mm,
Pluto can still be heavy and difficult for sure. It's not to downplay that, but it really feels like Mercury bringing the information to then be disseminated and shared. So I also, it just makes me wonder if maybe something like big news-wise comes out
mm.
at this time, or,
Absolutely.
like, yeah, do things emerge that perhaps people didn't want to have emerge? Or, yeah,
Mm,
like, is there a bit of a theme of things being uncovered, which can
yeah,
be a Pluto-Mercury theme?
absolutely. So his hidden secrets being unveiled.
Potentially, yeah.
Especially with those air signs. You've got Aquarius, where Pluto is, it's fixed air, something, that's been dislodged by that Mercury and Gemini to move it through. It's really, yeah, I'd be really fascinated to see what emerges around that 3rd of June. Mm.
And it's worth mentioning too that on the 4th of June at 8:12, Mercury will move to conjoin Jupiter exactly. So the conjunction's already well and truly in
Mm.
force at this point. It's only 2 degrees away, but that exact conjunction will be happening, yeah, like just over 24 hours later. So Mercury and Jupiter can be the growth of what we know, or, yeah, the dissemination and sharing of truth or something from our values. And so I think that we'll feel the beginnings of that once Mercury moves in, but that exact conjunction the next day could be a little bit more of a peaking of that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And then not long after that, we actually have the Venus Cazimi that's happening here as well. So there's a lot happening within these first few days of June. We sort of come into June, it's like it's on, and we're probably already feeling that already. But it's like this something has happened to things are moving fast now, and with that Venus in the heart of the sun, that is what a Cazimi is when a planet is conjunct with the sun.
Yeah. And so part of what Venus will be going through there is, because this is, so there are two moments that Venus conjoins the sun and has a Cazimi, and one of them is when she's moving direct, which is what's happening at the moment, and the other one happens when she's retrograde, which is more of an underworld journey. It's where Venus is down in the depths, meets the sun for that moment of below ground rebirth. But this is what's called a superior conjunction or superior Cazimi, and it's more an above world
Mm.
sky rebirth. And I think that there's just something interesting to reflect on in the nuance of the differences there, that this is more of a divinely timed shift or change, or, like, yeah, portal shift, more so than it is like a down in the muck rebirth,
Mm.
which will happen about a yearish, maybe a bit less than a year from now.
Yeah.
It's just a slightly different vibe. And we can see here too that this is Venus's decan in Gemini. So she has some extra resources in this place for that, to support her while she goes through that transformation and that transition. And the exact moment of the Venus Cazimi is the 5th of June at 12:39 a.m. AEST. And yes, she will be in her own decan and her own bound. So that is a lot of extra dignity, or a lot of extra support at that particular point in Gemini, which is really lovely.
Mm. So what it feels like, just to recap on all of that, this first week of June, this is in the lead up to, this is in the dark of the moon as well. So the next chart we'll show will be the new moon in Gemini, which will be on the 6th of June. But all this, the ingress of Mercury conjunct Jupiter, trined Pluto, and then this Venus Cazimi, it's like what Mercury brings when it trines Pluto, because that's the first sort of action that happens, has this knock-on effect that is the messenger bringing it through the line, going right to the sun.
Yeah, and I
Mm.
think, like, we didn't even meant, like, there's actually quite a lot happening
Yes.
in this couple of days. Is this sextile with Neptune here, which is separating but still within a
Mm.
degree. Like, classically speaking, Mercury can struggle a little bit with Neptune, because where Neptune is very dissolving and formless, and Mercury is very analytical, it can serve to kind of fog or make it difficult for Mercury to connect to the information, because Mercury is more quantitative than it is qualitative. Like it wants the ins and outs, and like, give me the statistics of the situation, not your subjective experience of the situation, is kind of what Mercury wants. And Neptune is far more subjective than it is objective. And so I wonder, particularly with this darkening moon, if maybe even some of Mercury significations in Gemini really kick off once that new moon begins, because by then Mercury will have separated a little bit more from Neptune at that last little degree of Pisces as well.
Yeah. What's just coming to me as you're saying that, it feels like whatever comes up with that that Mercury conjunct Jupiter trine Pluto, it's like it comes up, and because of that sextile still hanging there, it's like something comes up out of the secret or the dunk of, of the underworld, that's like, oh, that was hidden and now it's here, but can we believe it? I don't know. Like, it's that questioning of, is it real or is it not? We sort of have to sit with it for another few days for it to digest and process. And then after the new moon, for go, oh, okay, now I can understand it better. Or, there's something here in the dark of the moon that's unfolding that maybe we don't have a full glimpse of it yet. Yeah, it's just really fascinating to sit with that and to feel what will come out of the new moons, because I don't think we're going to get a clearer picture, or for it to be processed enough. Like, when you hear something that feels so outrageous that it takes you a while to process and to digest what's happening. It's just like, oh, really? That really happened? But it takes a while for it to be processed in the belly. Yeah, it's something about that.
I remember, I can't remember where this phrase came from, but suspending disbelief. I wonder if anyone listening to this has heard that term before, but there's something really powerful about being willing to suspend our disbelief when something shocking happens, but it's happened. And sometimes that disbelief is actually really protective while we do process, integrate, and even begin to comprehend what that shift or that change is. And like, that's for better or worse. That's not necessarily just for tricky changes, but I wonder if, like, is there potentially going to be a disbelief moment as things emerge? And this is a really beautiful example of how astrology in motion tells a story too, because we can see Mercury and Gemini and go, wow, bang, like, here's Mercury showing up for its own surprise party, but also it's the darkening moon. It's coming out of a close sextile with Neptune. We have the Plutonian conversation going on too, and so to be able to conceptualize how those other moving, like literally moving time-based parts begin and progress that story. That's a wonderful example of where we can start to place the triggers for certain things too, because we can look at that and have a bunch of delineations for what this placement means. But in terms of, well, when does the trigger get pulled on that? Like, when does that actually kick off and begin the story? That new moon, and potentially even the few days after the new moon, as the new moon starts to become visible again, could be more when that story starts to feel more concrete.
Yeah. And I'm just looking at too that this tightening of the sextile of the node, of the north node, and that trine with the south node here as well, is like there's something from the past again, but there's sort of glimpses of the future here. But yeah, this processing of what's happened in the past to inform of the future is also happening as this new moon comes in.
Should we jump into the next chart?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I'm just going to stop the share and start it again so that I can get my screens in the right place.
Okay.
I'll be 1 second.
It's okay. So we're going to be talking now about the new moon in Gemini happening on the 6th of June here, Australian Eastern Standard Time at 10:37 p.m.
There we go. So Here it is. Here's the chart for the new moon in Gemini. And so we can see the sun and the moon in the exact same place in the wheel of the zodiac, which is what a new moon is. It's their conjunction and their meeting, that moment where the moon is engulfed by the sun's light and can't be seen for about a day or so before and a day or so after. And what makes this new moon so special is that Venus is literally within a half a degree of all of this happening. Like that's as,
Mm,
as close as it gets, pretty
16.
much. And
Mm,
we've really been seeing a pattern of many of the lunations and the eclipse points too, weaving in another planet very, very closely like this. Like we
mm,
saw the total solar eclipse in Aries, how closely that wove in Chiron, like within a minute or two. And yeah, there's been a few other lunations I've noticed where another planet is just playing such an important role in what's unfolding there. And in this case, it's Venus. And she's very, very fresh, moving out of her own Cazimi, her
mm,
own being engulfed or consumed by the sun. And something worth thinking about with Cazimi and with conjunctions with the sun is that it's worth remembering that it's not just a transformation for Venus, it's actually a gain for the sun. And I wonder, yeah, I think that's really worth sort of unpacking a little bit there. Is like, yes, Venus is going through that fiery transformation whenever it is in Cazimi with the sun. But part of what the sun receives is the embedding and the absorbing of some of Venus's significations. And so with Venus ruling things like beauty and relationships and harmony, creativity and art, she is the muse, she's that divine source of inspiration, and yeah, that spark of creativity. And so if the sun is the center and is the core and is us, but is also the thing that shines down on our world, then Venus is kind of being beamed through the sun at this
mm.
moment as well. So those Venusian qualities in some ways can be difficult to access because Venus herself is very busy in the sweat lodge. But on the other hand, the sun really gets to benefit from that position. And so I think this new moon is really embedding deeply those Venusian principles. And if we weave the Gemini patterns in here too, it's flirtatious, it's joyful, it's fun, it's witty banter, it's that eye contact you
Beautiful.
make with someone when someone says something and you've got that in joke. Like it's those beautiful connecting, seemingly flighty moments that actually can hold great beauty and great meaning.
Yeah, I love that. And one of my favorite things to do when there's a Venus Cazimi like this is actually just sit in the rays of the sun and just feeling that Venus flowing through that rays and the warmth on your face and things like that. That is such a beautiful ritual to do with Cazimis, especially the Venus Cazimis. I think I love them. I love Venus Cazimis and just sitting out there and just allowing the rays of the sun, knowing that the energies of Venus is filtering through that sun like that and touching your skin. And it feels like it makes Venus more accessible when that's happening, because you can actually feel the warmth of the rays knowing that Venus is working through that, which is really lovely. And and thank goodness that Venus is here, because what we also hear is a tightening square with Saturn, which is at 18 degrees of Pisces. And this square energy is like this 90-degree angle. So if we were to draw this from Saturn and say this is us in the middle, which is Earth, right? And we've got this is a 90-degree angle from where Saturn is to where this new moon and Venus is happening. And this 90-degree angle is what it looks like. It's like this tension, this pressure here to take action, because the point of the square, the 90-degree angle, is pushing up against each other in a way that at some point something's got to give, because there's so much tension in that square there. So Saturn is is the Kronos, is the lord of time. But in Pisces, in an unbounded space, it's like, well, it feels like that timeline shifting. It's like, well, what timeline are you choosing here when there's pressure here to choose the path of the heart, or the, choose the path of where Venus is, of stretching out to receive the sun of the, the light of Venus that's shining through the sun at a new moon. Like, new moon is the start of a new lunar cycle. So, what are you starting off this what's your spell, what's your prayer in this new moon that, feels like this call to take action on living a new timeline.
And I think too, like, what can you do now that will
Mm,
serve Venus for many months to come, or potentially even many years to come? Like,
mm,
what are you weaving in here? Thinking of, as you were saying, that, Saturn holds that archetype of the Lord of Time. And Saturn really deeply appreciates and demands longer term commitment and
mm.
things that, that's where it's saying like standing the test of time are so
Discipline.
Saturnian.
Mm,
Like, how can you create to that in a constructive way? And this is also one of those ways that I can't think of a better phrase. I don't love it, but this is one of the ways where like astrology is such a life hack,
mm,
because that Saturn square, that new moon, has the potential to kind of contract some of the beauty of
mm.
that moment, or to put a bit of like, have a bit of a stick in the mud kind of vibe for all of this really like happy, uplifting Gemini. And then you've kind of got Saturn in the corner being like, well, there's, we should be doing other things, and you guys aren't listening to me. And, like Saturn's very overwhelmed by the, at this point, 5 planets that are in Gemini. But I think, like, how can we weave Saturn in? Like,
Mm,
how can we kind of go, we know you're not going to lighten up like the rest of us, but how can we still include you and call you in? And so part of those things could be like, yes, let's have a party, but while that's happening, also maybe let's infuse some oil sacred to Venus that we're not going to be able to use for another month. Or
mm.
like, yeah, like how can we connect? And that's actually something I think I might do. I might infuse some oils and pop them in the sun for an hour or two under that Cazimi, that can then be used down the track. Is just,
Mm.
and that's the whole thing with the new moon too, is like what's being planted now that we want to see harvested 6 months from now. And Saturn wants us to take that seriously and to be held accountable for that. And that's
Mm.
okay.
Absolutely. And I think, and that discipline that comes with, you know, to hold the good stuff, that Saturn's calling us to be, really disciplined in our spell crafting and what we want to see for the next couple of years. Because I just want to highlight here this point where Jupiter and Mercury are right now. This point here is so big, because what we will see next year, Uranus is going to move into Gemini. And what's going to happen between 25 to 27, Uranus is going to be trining Pluto here so as we've seen, this Mercury and Jupiter being trining Pluto. Uranus will be trining Pluto as well for 2 whole years, between the degrees of 2 to 8 degrees. So that'll be happening from 25, 26, 27. It starts to separate. But this feels huge in the lead up to. So yeah, it's like, what do you need to hold yourself through changes? Uranus will bring change. We know that back in the 60s, when Uranus conjunct Pluto, it was that, it's revolutionary times. It brought up all the social injustice issues to be brought up from the stuff hidden, and it needs to change. So what can you do now? And Rick Levine talked about this on the Astrology Hub podcast. It's like, what can we do now to prepare or sow the seeds or become disciplined, what Saturn's calling us to do at this new moon through the rays of Venus? What can we do now to support us when these changes are happening, with, because Uranus trine Pluto thing, it feels like a very like harmonious but maybe easeful change, but it could happen quick. Gemini, maybe that's the easefulness, that it'd be quick changes. And so be ready for that. So what can you do now while we can still get things ready and move about and do the things to bring the seeds that will hold us through these big changes that are to come in the next few years.
And that is such a good segue to plug our episode 2, Jupiter's
Mm,
time in Gemini episode. That's 3 hours in which we go through talking about Jupiter as a planet. We talk about Gemini as a sign, and then we mold it together and make Jupiter and Gemini. And we talk about what that's going to look like for a year and some of the key transits there. And a lot of what we talk about is how Jupiter's time in Gemini is a setup for some really, really enormous outer planet moves and changes like Yvonne's been talking about now. So if that's kind of like got something resonating in you, definitely go and have a listen to episode 2 for Jupiter's time in Gemini.
yeah. The preparation for what's to come. And I think this is what Saturn's calling us to do at this new moon.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Shall we
Okay.
go on to
We
Mars ingressing into Taurus?
shall. Absolutely. So Mars ingress into Taurus. This is happening on the 9th of June, 2024, here, Australian Eastern Standard Time at 2:35 p.m. Yes. Wow. This shifts things a little bit for Mars. Mars moves so quickly through its home sign in Aries and coming into that fixed Earth of Taurus now. It's like, woof. Okay, now what do we do? What happens when Mars, the planet of action and movement, comes into something that's fixed of the Earth?
Yeah, and I think it's really worth having a think about the bigger picture of essential dignity and sort of where the planets have an easeful time or a more difficult time, like where are they resourced, where are they not so well resourced. And so Mars's domiciles are Aries and Scorpio. And so Mars has just moved out of Aries and into Taurus. And what that means is that the signs opposing Mars and Scorpio are places of detriment or places of difficulty, which are Taurus and Libra. And so Mars has just entered into Taurus, which is a place of difficulty for him. And as Yvonne said, Taurus is slow and plodding and fixed and stubborn and is very happy with the same. Whereas Mars is dynamic and wants action and wants to be kept busy. And so I think that Mars in Taurus time requires us to really give our energy something to do. It makes me think of my daughter, my 3-year-old, 3.5-year-old, when she's like got energy to burn, and it's like I'm my head's being done in, to be frank. Like, give them a task, give them a job, let them feel helpful. Like this is the time where I think Mars needs to feel helpful and needs to have a task. And I think that if that doesn't happen, Mars can get frustrated and can lash out in Taurus. And I think something else which is really big here is that Mars's time in Aries, which is, just about to finish up, this is going to be the last time for a year or more, actually until well over a year, until Mars enters another place of dignity again. Mars is only going to be in signs where there's no particular dignity or where there is difficult circumstances, because later in the year, Mars will be retrograding through Leo and Cancer. And so this last bit of sorry.
Oh no, I was going to say, it stays in Leo and Cancer for such a long time. It's pretty
Like
much
6
the
or 7
whole of
months.
Jupiter's, pretty much whole of Jupiter's journey through Gemini, like that last stage. It's just like Mars does not move.
Yeah, because by the time Mars slows down enough to station retrograde and then goes backwards a little bit and then slows down enough to station direct
Mm.
and then slowly gets
Mm.
moving again, that's like a 6 or 7 month period. And so my point with this is that from here, Mars is not going to have supportive dignity again for over a year.
Mm.
So maybe something we get to lean into and learn about Mars in Taurus is how do we channel that well? How
Mm.
can Taurus bring Mars in and give him a big list of shit to get done so that Mars isn't feeling grumpy or feeling, itchy and restless about what it
Mm.
could be doing instead.
Mm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking of that Mars and Aries, why it's still here until this point. It's like that, it's what we said before, is like that setting up of the structures. And so when Mars does move into Taurus to help relieve some of that frustration, it's already got a task list to do. And I'm just thinking of that Tory and that need for structure. It's like the bull on the earth, the hard earth structure that it's required to move. If the structure, like, this is the time when Mars is still in Aries, when you're listening to this is the time to get those structures in place. So by the time this happens on the 9th of June, the list is already done. We've already got and it's easy for Mars to go and look down the list of the structures that need to happen next without having to try and find the structures. And I think if that happens, it will be an easier flow for Mars throughout Taurus, because it actually doesn't stay in Taurus long. Like, it moves through pretty quick. But if we can have the structures ready to go for Mars to just come along and tick off the list, it's going to make it a much smoother transition, I think. And especially, are we ready to move on, or do you want to talk a bit more about this?
I just like what I was envisioning with Mars and Taurus and really connecting it to that earthy Taurian
Mm.
component is like it's building the woodshed.
Mm.
It's building the woodshed, it's fixing the wheel on the cart, it's repairing your car.
Mm.
Like Mars very much rules transportation and automobiles and things like that. Like, this is the time to put your car in for a service. Like, just make sure that those Marshall wheels that turn are well lubricated,
Mm.
everything's got fresh oil and fresh water, and I'm just kind of like checking on those things. This is a time to resource Mars, and while that can feel frustrating for that Martial energy that wants to get up and go, particularly having that energy to burn while it's in Aries, I think it's just worth thinking about, how can you resource things well at this point, particularly because within a few months we will have Mars entering its shadow period, and yeah, for the better part of 7 months, that retrograde period will be kicking off.
Yeah.
The other thing worth mentioning here is that, just looking at my notes, so this is also within a day of the Sun squaring Saturn here.
Mm.
So we can see Saturn at 19 degrees of Pisces, and yeah, the Sun is at 18 degrees and 50 minutes. So it's only 14 minutes away from that perfected square.
Mm.
So that happens on I've got the 8th of June, but I feel like that's wrong. Maybe it's the 10th of June. I think it's just later that evening, actually, later this evening on the 9th here. That will be exact, but it's happening here nonetheless.
It's happening on the ninth at 8:33 p.m. So that day,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
at 19 degrees and 5 minutes.
And so this is an important part in the Sun-Saturn cycle. And so
Mm.
as the Sun moves around the zodiac, and takes a full year to do that, the Sun will check in with each of the planets as it goes around. And sometimes it takes a little bit more, a little bit less than a year or so, depending on how quickly the planets move. But this square moment is a moment of building tension that would have begun with the Sun Saturn conjunction on the 29th of Feb. And I think, Yvonne, you had some things.
Yes, so this point to this 20 degree sort of mark of Pisces where Saturn is, this is a very pivotal point, because at this point Saturn is moving so slow. It's about to retrograde, and it will retrograde on the very last day of June. So it's not moving fast. So it's like this it's holding space here. And if we think back to that Saturn Cazimi, which happened on here we go, the 29th of February. So if we go back, I remember that was right around that Virgo full moon. And so what did we learn about this moment around back in late February? And this is the first point of testing whatever came up there. So if you think about that, and I think we do, well, we're going to show the chart actually of that.
Yes.
Yeah. So just so you can see, so this is the chart of February the 29th with that Sun Cazimi here, this Saturn Cazimi here at 9 degrees. This is the last time they met, and this is just after that Virgo full moon. So if I remember correctly, there were a lot of things happening in that last week of February. I'm thinking personally, especially with that Saturnian energy of calling us to step up and take responsibility or have accountability that came through the rays of the sun at that point in a really big way. And this feels like this square that's happening at this time is like, well, how did you go with that?
Mm.
Let's just see, let's just test it and just see how you went with the project or the instructions that Saturn gave you back on the 29th of February. Because just to draw it here, so this is on the 29th. So this is happening. So the sun has moved around to this point here. So you can see the sun's movement. But this this conversation that the sun has had since then, it's had a conversation, with the nodal points in Chiron and Jupiter and Uranus. Like it's had a fair run in this first quarter of this cycle between Sun and Saturn. So to really take note and to, I guess, witness ourselves and reflect back to this 29th of February and just see what has changed. How did you do on that Saturnian test that's coming up to show you what you've learnt? Thinking of Saturn, who is the elder here, who's showing you what needs to happen next for you to step into your own eldership and to just see, we'll take note what's happened since then, and maybe a good time to reflect and what now, and this square, a square's a tension point. What do you need to do to now action something else to move forward as the sun will move and have, where is it, in Libra? No, it'll be in, sorry, be in Virgo later on in the year. It will be in opposition. So, the next quarter of this journey will be coming up to the full illumination. So if there's weeds here, or something that you're not liking that Saturn gave you, this is the time to change it. So it's not a bigger problem by the time that the sun is opposite Saturn.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at, so I think next up is Mars square Pluto.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a really big one. So
Mm.
Mars will be squaring Pluto on the 11th of June at 11:11 p.m. So there's a whole numbers game happening with this for us and in the eastern part of Australia.
Yes. Lots of 11s. Isn't that a mastery number?
I
11?
have no idea, actually. I'm not very good with numerology.
Yeah. I believe.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Yes, it's 11, like 11 is a mastery number. And remember, this is for Australian Eastern Standard Time. But how uncanny or serendipitous on the
Yeah.
11th of June at 11:11.
When
Like,
it's to the minute, it demands your attention, doesn't it? Like it's one
absolutely.
thing to have the hour, it's another thing when it's on the minute. Oh, that's right. And this is also on a Tuesday, which is Mars's day. So
Mm,
this is like if you want, yeah, that this is big Mars energy.
mm,
And particularly like Mars Pluto square is not at all a favorable aspect. Like this is a really tense, difficult aspect. And we have Mars, the planet, um, of fire, of energy, of aggravation, of inflammation, of heat, in a place where it's not super comfortable in Taurus,
Mm.
squaring, forming that tense aspect with Pluto, which is like, yes, planet of underworlds and transformation and finding the gold, but also it's a planet which is very corrupting and can
Mm.
make big things look small and small things look big, and it is very deceiving. And so Mars Pluto can be a very explosive configuration. And
Yeah.
what we're seeing here will be this is the first tense aspect in the Mars Pluto cycle that happens. And
Mm.
so the
Just to
this cycle, oh sorry, you go.
That's all right. I was just going to do a little reflection just so we know, we can see how this has turned out. So last time Mars was squared Pluto was on the 8th of October 2023. And it was at this point that kicked on the Israeli and Palestine conflict that really, really amped up here at this point. And then we had the conjunction of Mars and Pluto at 0 degrees on the 14th of February. And I believe that was, I can't remember exactly what happened, but I believe there was another amplification of that particular conflict that rose up to the surface. And then on May 3rd, just last month, we had Mars sextiled the Pluto at 2 degrees.
Yeah, and we've seen through what's happening with the genocide in Palestine, we have really seen the power of Mars unbound, unrepentant,
Mm.
and a very corrupted and corruptible Mars energy. And we can see that partly and quite largely in its core through the Mars and Pluto cycle, but also because our eclipses are Mars and Libra ruled. And some of the biggest like worst moments in this last, how many months is it now? Just
Mm.
7, 8 months long genocide, like some of the biggest escalations have happened under eclipses and with these Mars Pluto transits. And so I think that, and what we're seeing at the moment too, it's the 29th of May today, like we're seeing some truly
Mm.
just, there aren't even words to describe how terrible um, things have escalated at the moment. And that's really, I think, potentially going to feel that tension very strongly at this time with that narrative of what's happening
Mm.
for Palestine.
Yeah. And just thinking to, that particular conflict and how it's gaining just I'm just thinking why worldwide notification. And but what's different here compared to October is that Pluto is now in Aquarius, which is about the collective. And it feels like as Pluto here is retrograde, so it's moving back into Capricorn, which we'll do at the first week of September, but it's taking information from this square back into um, Capricorn to, I feel, and I'm hoping and praying, it's like this can't go on. Like, we've come out to the collective, this is a worldwide, um, I'm just thinking of this world, like it's a collective thing now. It's just not this particular area. It's a collective thing. And when Pluto goes back into Capricorn, it's going to have some words to say about this and to say this can't go on. Everybody is here and is aware of what's going on. This can't go on anymore. But yeah, it's interesting to know that there's a different energy here to it. It's that of the earth now with the Taurian energy. It's earth and air going back into, with that going back into earth, and it feels like that global energy that's taking it back into Capricorn after this square.
Yeah, I think that's such an important part of the bigger narrative of what's unfolding in the world at the moment, with what's happening in Palestine being at the beating heart of so much of what's happening with that, is that some of the significations of Capricorn is patriarchy, and is
Mm.
that, like it's very traditional, it's very past looking. It's about the strong foundations, and like those are all beautiful things in their own right, but when they are corrupted
Mm.
and when they are resisting the death part of the cycle and have lived well beyond the expiry date, this is what we get. This is
Mm.
what we see, is so many systems operating at absolutely unbelievable levels of extremes, and of manifesting the absolute worst faces of those things. And as Pluto over this last couple of years has dipped in and out of and over that edge of Capricorn and Aquarius, more and more people are having the veils
Mm.
unceremoniously ripped off, and we can no longer unsee it. And some of us are still trying to not see,
Yeah.
but the fact of the matter is it cannot go on as it has been.
Mm.
And Mars and Pluto play that out through things like conflict, and
Mm.
through things like severing from what has once been. But there's a shit fight to happen
Absolutely.
before that actually changes.
Yeah, and this is not necessarily like this is bigger than what's happening in the Middle East. This is on so many channels are we seeing this big these what was once veiled and happening is no longer like we are getting like it's like that we've come here for these times, like we are living for these times because it's such a monumental shifting of energies, and things are just being lifted, and we're seeing things for the first time that were playing out in the cupboards, or the in the unseen realms. And I think this is what Pluto's job's going to be in Aquarius, in which we're already seeing is these unveilings, what has been unearthed here, that we can no longer look away. And as it's going to be so interesting to watch what happens when Pluto dips back into Capricorn from September, and I think it's to, is it December? It's only a few months, but
Mm.
what it's going to bring up again from the past to say no. And I think we are only just seeing the beginning of this, and more people, or more things are going to be, unveiled as this happens. And so this feels like that rumblings of this, because now we see, like, so many people are seeing what's happening on so many different channels. It's like we can't unsee it now. And as it goes back into Capricorn, it's like that is going back into it, telling those who try to hide or try and do dodgy deals, saying, game over, mate. You can't, this stops here. And as it happens, we are such in precedental times. And this is why that new moon, as we spoke about, is really important, why we can still make changes and still do things and to set up. Like, this is the time to do now. So if you're holding back on anything, and I guess bring it more personally, if this square is showing you fear or something that, it's like you're being shown a way. And if you're holding back in fear of stepping forward, this tension, this square is going to bust you through that, or not. And if it doesn't, it's going to be really fucking uncomfortable. So, like if you're thinking about doing something, to taking a leap of faith, this is the time to do it. Like, this square is not going to hold you through that. In fact, it's just going to make it real even more uncomfortable, because whatever is happening is going back to say, well, you can't carry that anymore. This can't happen anymore. It's time to move it and change it for the earth. This is the time. Yeah, because there's so many changes that are happening. And again, at that 0, 1, 2, 3 degree point, it's such a sensitive point throughout your chart. Have a look where this is happening. Have a look where Taurus is in your chart. Have a look where your Aquarius is in your chart, because this is what's happening now.
And I think there's so many layers on which the angst between the personal and the collective is such a key part of the story, because both Capricorn and Aquarius, it's collective earth and collective air. If you follow the elements around the zodiac wheel, one way of looking at it is that Aries, Taurus, Gemini, and Cancer all hold the personal version of the elements. That Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio hold more relational versions of the elements, and then Scorpio, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces hold more collective, community versions of the elements. And so we have it happening on the level of the hierarchical nature of collective earth with Capricorn. And then the collective Aquarian breaking of those structures so that things are dismantled and spread out. And I'm literally seeing like a pyramid for Capricorn of how the majority are all underneath, holding the tiny little, speck of the people on the top of the pyramid. And that Aquarius is about pulling that shit down. And so that's where part of that story is playing out. But Pluto, being a planet that is just so far away, tends to speak more to the bigger cycles of time. And we are in a moment in time in which we are witnessing an empire crumble and begin its death throes. And Mars will really set a match to that and be like, you want to see it burn? All right, let's see it burn.
Yeah.
And
So exciting.
it is. And so perhaps part of this transit and what I'm feeling for myself is how can you no longer participate in this collective as it has been, and as how some people are enforcing it to still be, even though we in and of ourselves can feel it is no longer congruent with reality. I know, like, this is a very small aside. In June, I'm taking some time off. I'm taking a couple of months off from my one-on-one clinical practice. And it's partly because of shit like this. It's because like I literally just can't operate in a world in which I am primary parent 6 days a week, running my own business, working while my 3.5-year-old begs me to play with her. Like, that's that tension of like, what part of that nuclear family bullshit dream that we were sold can I no longer participate in? And how do I work with the tension and the discomfort that generates in my body? Like, am I willing to answer to that? And so looking at this makes me so bloody grateful I'm taking a break, because if I didn't, I would literally burn out here. And I can feel that beginning already. But I hope that that's just like a little window into a more personal version of, what are you being called to really honor here that's not working? And particularly with Mars in Taurus, like, what part of your sustainable energy just isn't sustainable anymore and is being highlighted in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just thinking of, old stories and thought patterns and, of things that hold us back from stepping out, and to living this new timeline that, we're being sung up to live. Like, what kind of world do you want to live in? And what stories are there that are holding you back? I'm actually channeling this Chiron and Mars that's happening at the moment, I feel. Also in this, like, the last aspect that Mars made here was with Chiron. And so, whatever came up at this time at the end of May, there's something here we're being shown that by the time this square comes up, if we're still holding or still getting snagged by old, outdated stories that no longer serve you, could show up here to really be cracked. And I feel that this could be a cracking open if we allow it to happen, and to really lift veils up Pluto, and to go, fuck, does this serve anymore? Can it, does this serve the greater timeline, the world that we want to leave our children? What is it here that we can't take with us, and thinking that that arrow of Mars and from the personal point of view out to Pluto to the collective and Aquarius, it's like, ugh, we don't want that anymore. So what do we need to do that to change that now? Mm.
Oh goodness, I feel that.
Mm.
And there's, oh, I had something, I think it's gone. No, I think it's gone.
Mm. So big time.
Yeah, it really truly is. And that's, I can just feel the very edge of it. That's what it was. So there's something that I just wanted to mention, that like we can look at a Mars Pluto aspect like that and go, ooh, like that's not a great aspect. That's tricky. But it's, I think that if we can connect, my brain is doing a visual thing, if we can connect with it in this way of that this is so volatile, that's actually a big part of what makes this so difficult, is we
Mm.
have this shifting, corrupting Pluto with this dynamic, naturally fast-paced Mars. Like it really is, it's like lots of volatile chemicals that if they get too close to each other, they're going to trigger each other and explode. And so that doesn't guarantee that an explosion is what will come from this aspect, though. And this is where our own, especially on that personal level, like our own ability to navigate discomfort and to truly listen to what comes up for us
Mm.
will play a really big role in how difficult this is. And look, sometimes it's out of our hands, and we just get dealt something really shit and really hard. And that's life, like that comes up in life too. But when we're doing this kind of work and we are looking to the stars for understanding and encouragement and to move through our life in a way that is at least partly of our own making and choosing, that there's just, this is such an example of an aspect that, like, yeah, there might be an 80 to 90% chance that this is going to be an ouchy one. You can still bring your awareness and your knowledge of this to how you navigate that,
Mm.
and that has the capacity to soften it. And like you were saying, Yvonne, like you're going to be uncomfortable. How uncomfortable do you want to be? It's not about finding the comfortable way to do this. It's about finding a way that isn't quite as uncomfortable
Mm.
as it might have been otherwise.
Yeah. And to know that we're all experiencing this. So,
Yeah.
and it's funny because, Taurus is in my 11th house, the collective. Of course, I would say that. But, I'm just thinking we're all having this transit. We're all experiencing this. So we all have maybe different channels or different areas in our life that it's happening in, but we're all going through this together, which I think is really special. And so we can make this collective prayer of what we want to see happen after this. What are the bust through moments that a square creates for, Pluto to take back into Capricorn to be a messenger for us. Yeah, it
And that's
feels.
the thing too, right? It's like, be the, it's such a cliche, but be the change, like
Mm.
don't wait for someone up on high to be like, now is the time for the new earth. Like,
Be
shut
it.
up. Enough, like no more from you. Sit down, shut up. Like be
Such an
as
Aquarian
much as
thing to say.
yeah, I'm enough from you. Like, and also honoring that we all have boundaries and difficult contractive elements that make the life that we most want to be living not completely possible, perhaps, but there is always going to be some wiggle room in change that we can make for the better. Like,
Mm.
what do you want to see in that? Like, what is that? What has that unveiling exposed, and how do you choose to participate with it?
Mm.
And like, do it. Don't
Mm.
don't wait for someone else to wave a green flag. Like, that's part of how revolutions happen, and that's part of how empires fall, is by each individual picking up through the pieces of that and figuring out, like, well, how can I take responsibility for how I participate and potentially perpetuate this, whether within or without, like whether
Mm.
within the narrative of my beliefs and thought patterns and worldview, or in the way that I interact with my family and the world at
Mm.
large.
Absolutely. I'm just thinking of the words, the revolution won't be televised. And so the
Yeah.
more of us who are choosing something different, choosing, what kind of world do we want to leave our great grandchildren, to be in service to love, to step into that as an individual. It's like the 70s. Was it 30, 70, the tipping point. If there's
Mm,
enough of us doing that, it's just going to happen. And I already feel it actually because we're
yeah.
talking about it. There's already a wave of change happening. And talking about Taurus, on the earth ground level, that it's not hierarchical. Things
Mm,
are happening, and I don't feel there's any stopping it now. We're already in it.
yeah.
More of us, and I think this is that Mars calling us to take action on this, to be the change, to be, to prepare for that Uranus trine Pluto that's going to happen next year and for 2 whole years. Like, this is exactly what we're talking about. This is a part of the preparation, is to move with, our hearts, and to come back to, that Taurian. Fuck, I love Taurus. And it's just like that on the ground, building the structures, looking at the beauty, the simplistic beauty that is here, but that's where we're driving that Mars arrow towards, into that square, and to penetrate through whatever is being brought up, or whatever we're being shown during this time, to go, yeah, I see that. Thanks very much, but I'm choosing that
Mm.
instead. Mm.
Man, I feel like we could just talk about this for another
Oh, we could.
hour.
We better
Oh
move
my
on.
goodness. It's such, yeah, it's just so much has already happened with the Mars story and the Pluto story and the eclipse story, and this is just another installment of all of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so next up we have the Mercury Cazimi on the
Mm.
15th of June 2024 at 2:21 a.m. AEST.
Okay, and this is happening at 24 degrees and 5 minutes of Gemini. Again, another Cazimi, Mercury working through the heart of the sun. And how it's really interesting, if you sat out in the sunlight here on the 5th of June and just felt the rays working through Mercury, because, especially in its home sign, I feel like this is a good time to just allow that to move, and to bring through ideas, and soak in what is happening at this time, especially after that square.
It really is such like a marker of divine inspiration, isn't it? Like
Mm-hmm.
the Mercury Cazimi in and of itself, but happening in Gemini, which to me, um, there really is like Gemini, something we don't talk about enough with Gemini is it's so intuitive.
Mm.
It's so tapped into like it's not just information as in like data and words and blah blah. It's all of the information all of the time from all of the aliens and all of the trees and all of the things, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I can speak on that.
hands
So,
talking.
a personal account of Gemini in the 12th house. For me, Gemini in the 12th house, 12th house is the void. It is the space of the unseen realm. And, to have Gemini in the 12th house is talking to, the spirit world, and the guides and the power animals, and, connecting into something otherworldly that's not in the physical here, and to be able to absorb that information. And when Mercury is in the sun, it's hidden, as we said, it's hidden, so it's unseen. So this feels like, yeah, that ability to tap into unseen realms, because we can't see Mercury, and to allow the sun to penetrate through and to receive. It really feels like receiving messages or stories, or allowing the brain to process something other than what is here on the earth, to, I don't know, to be digested.
Oh, I love that so much. And as we're talking about this, I can hear Naya downstairs just like chat, 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 chat to dad. And like a 3-year-old is the epitome of Mercury, like
Yeah.
believe you me. But she's also just going, like, just doing this weird little giggle thing. And it's just, I can really feel that Mercury, Sun, Venus, and just the absolute, like, just loving the sound of your own voice and just chat for chat's sake. Like, of just, yeah, that's so beautiful. But really feeling that like divinely ordained moment. And there's something quite special happening here. So,
Mm.
when we look at drawing down the stars for the sake of astrological prayers or petitions, or for making something that is astrologically informed, there's a few different things that we want to look at to see, like, is this a good moment to draw this energy or this frequency of something down? And to find a truly good moment with all the boxes ticked is actually quite difficult. But we have here, with the moon being in Virgo, this is a Mercury ruled moon while this Cazimi is happening. So the moon is really in service to fully importing whatever it is that Mercury is just fully integrating and assimilating at this time. Like, this is like installing a brand new update for your computer and everything just moves better and you've got more space. You're like, oh, I can do this, which makes my productivity so much better now. And I can just flick over here and this happens. Like,
The
that's
new
kind
app
of like,
upgrade.
it's totally, yeah, it is. It's a new upgrade or something. But with the moon being
Mm.
in a Mercury ruled sign, it just amplifies that so exponentially. So this is
Mm.
already a notable conjunction. But
Mm.
with the moon on Mercury's side, it is like beaming that down really strongly. And I love that it's just caught the moon
Mm.
within, a few hours of moving into Libra. So, oh, it's a shame that this is like the dead of night, because this would have been a really nice time. Oh, it's a Saturday. Some of us might
It's a
be up.
Saturday, yeah.
I won't be up.
Mm.
This could be a really nice time, if you're up for it, to just spend some time dropping into your body, calling in that energy of the planet Mercury, connecting to things like its sacred metal of quicksilver, calling in its sacred numbers, speaking the Orphic hymn, like all these different things that can connect to Mercury things, eating some sugary lollies, would be a really beautiful way to attune to the planet Mercury and get a sense for what it feels like when it's having this very like light bulb epiphany moment. And again, like with Venus being so close there, it's so sweet. Like there's such a lovely supported, beauteous component of that. And at this point too, they're also 5 degrees away from that from that square with Saturn. So
Mm.
whatever tension that may have created a week earlier, it is kind of dissipating and being integrated at this point.
Mm. Yeah, and just looking at this at the moon here, which is in Venus's decan as well, which adds another sweetness, I think, to that flavor of that moon in a Mercury ruled sign of Virgo, and having Mercury so close in this. And it's really interesting with they're in Uranus. So it's like this decan of Uranus of in Gemini is this change element. It's like this sweetness for the change. And actually just what I'm feeling is after that Mars square Pluto, it's like that breaking through moment and actually going, wow, these are the new seeds of change that we're collecting, and the deliciousness of that can bring when we just work really, really hard and we can sit back and just go, oh, wow, this is what this was showing me. This is a new story that's unfolding here. That those delicate little seeds that we can feel the gold that is the result of whatever those tension, though, that Saturn square and those Pluto and Mars square brought into us. It's this moment of time of just going, oh, okay, okay, okay. I see it now. Okay, okay. Mm.
Yeah, very much so. And something that I don't think we mentioned with Mars square Pluto, and I'd need to have another look at the chart, but I'm fairly sure that Mars Pluto square, it's the only conversation Mars is having at
It
this
is.
time.
Yeah.
And because Mars is in conjunct, so it's in a position where it's not able to see the planets in the signs next door,
Mm,
that Mars is not a part of the conversation that's happening here. And so I think that there is just something nice to think about how whatever it was that's been brought up, that this is like not completely separate, but it's not rooted in that, like, yeah,
mm,
Mars just doesn't have a whole lot to say here. And I
mm,
think that that just kind of uplifts it even more and puts that Pluto Mars story just like a little bit on the back burner in this moment.
mm, mm, mm.
Like perhaps this is an epiphany moment after we've moved through the tension and the difficulty to then be able to integrate some of the beauty that can come from doing the hard work. I think
Mm,
sometimes we anticipate something being really difficult and we can put it off, or and it's only when we finally do it that we're like, oh, you know what? I'm actually so glad I've done that. It's like the hard conversations in
mm,
relationships. Just
mm,
like, oh
mm,
God, I don't have to talk about this again. And but you get it off your chest and you actually end up closer as a result. Like, I don't think that's a perfect analogy for
mm, mm.
this astrological story, but I think that there is definitely a moment of yeah, divinely oriented holding here happening at this time.
Absolutely. And I'm just thinking of that word epiphany. And, in Anana's journey, when we're ascending, there's something about when you reclaim something or and sometimes that's really hard, right? If you're reclaiming in this squares of, something that you want to see come to pass, but to wade through the old stories and the wounding that comes from that. But when we do, and we crack through, there's a moment after we enter through that ascent gate of just like, oh, and you get this glowing sort of new perspective on whatever is coming through, and you just have to sit with it for a moment just to really to absorb it and just go, okay. It's that thing that comes from doing the hard yards and to crack open and to see what really gold awaits in this moment.
So this is encouragement for all of you listening for whom this has not yet unfolded. Do your best to lean into the
Mm,
discomfort because
mm,
there will be something on the other side of that that is just like, yeah, nothing short of divine encouragement from the great above. And even like we talked about with the Venus Cazimi, that's Venus in direct motion as opposed to a
mm,
retrograde Cazimi. It's the same with Mercury at the moment. So Mercury is direct. This is not a like digging up and piecing back to get, like, this is really a reassembly. It's
mm,
a splitting up for a reassembly, and that they both are. It all is, but
mm.
it's just, yeah, there's just something a little bit more uplifting and fully illuminated and seen with the superior Cazimis as opposed to the inferior retrograde ones.
Yeah, beautiful.
All right, what's next?
What is next? We have Venus and Mercury ingress into Cancer. Oh, thank goodness.
It's so nice. And so here we have, and so this happens within like 2 hours of each other or 4 hours of each other, where Venus enters in and then Mercury comes so this is at 7:07 p.m. on the 17th of June. And Venus is at 4:21 p.m. So yeah, like literally 3 hours earlier. And we can see the sun here trailing who will be there as well in 4 days from here.
Oh, this is such a nice ingress. It feels like this cooling, this slowing down, this really sitting with what is nourishing, what is feeling like, I'm just feeling the wrapping up of the mother in you're snuggling up to the mother in her arms and just seeing what nourishes you, what is wholesome and good.
Yeah, it really does feel like a reprieve.
Mm,
And I think that there was a beginning of a reprieve when the planet started moving into Gemini, if only because we got space from you know, the big Uranian energy
Mm,
that was at the end of Taurus, or just the big intense Aries energy, or like the big intense Saturn in Pisces. Like there's just all the outer planets there. And with Jupiter's ingress, it's just been busy. There's been a lot going on from Pisces to Gemini. And it feels like with Venus, Mercury, and soon the Sun all coming into Cancer, it does. It just feels like a and
mm,
I think that yeah, it's, and particularly this fits so beautifully for us here in the Southern Hemisphere, that although Cancer season is associated with summer in the Northern Hemisphere, I think there is such an invitation into connecting with the nourishment we
mm,
really need over Cancer season. We'll talk about that with the winter solstice chart in a moment. But yeah, this just feels like such a reprieve from the last like 4 to 6 months of just having, frankly, like all this work to do. There's just been a lot of
mm,
work to do. It's like, look at this and don't forget that and tick this off the list and you forgot this guy. And this is a moment to, I think, lay some tools down
mm.
and just do things for the joy of it, and do things just because it nourishes you with no other agenda.
And this, this is the start of that Cancerian season where it's, either side of the solstice, the winter solstice here in the southern hemisphere, which is all about the coming in and the nourishment. I'm just thinking of the beautiful warm soups that warm your belly and the fire, and it's also at this time in the southern hemisphere so close to winter solstice. Winter solstice, and we'll talk about this in a sec. That marker of something new. It's like the womb. It's the womb waters. Cancer is cardinal water. So what are we dreaming in these new, dreaming waters of something new here? We are birthing. What are we birthing here? In the, what seeds have we collected through the harvest from summer solstice back in December 21st in 2023? This is it. This is now letting go, holding the seeds, those precious seeds in our hands, and sort of dipping our toe in the cardinal waters of the dreaming of the year to come. So this feels a very important moment with this first resting point of incubation of Venus and Mercury. And Venus and Mercury, they've shown us a lot over the last,
Yeah.
6 months during that time. They've had conversations with all the outer planets, with Pluto and Saturn and Neptune and the North Node and Chiron and Uranus and Jupiter. Like they're both these personal planets have had a lot of processing to do. And this is the point where we can just sit and just bathe in the cardinal waters of Cancer, I feel.
And that's really strengthened by the square with Neptune. Oh
Mm,
no, that's not happening until later. Sorry, I misread that. Oh no, it is. Yeah, sorry. So it's
yeah.
just as those planets moved into that 29th degree of Gemini, that perfected square with Neptune happened. And so this really is that restful dreaming space, not just because of everything you've just said so beautifully, but there's that extra component of Neptune having something to say there
Mm-mm.
as well as this like perfect trine to the moon, also in the watery sign of Scorpio. Like there really is just such a facilitation happening for this. I feel like there's a real gift in conceptualizing this as the few days before winter solstice, have a real like deep think and deep dream
Mm.
about how you want that to be a supported process this year. Like, do you have more wiggle room than you believe you do, to make some time for yourself, to go slow, to have a really beautiful family meal? I'm thinking that, this is the time of year that would be having like Christmas celebrations and things, like in terms of what we experience seasonally. And we'll talk about this in a minute, but it's like this is a couple of days before that point where you can really lean into that and just like listen to what is arising. Like winter solstice is not creeping up on us, you know, we know that it's coming. And I think that this ingress happening this 3 or 4 days beforehand is just, and with the moon making it so
Mm.
real and manifest, there's just such an opportunity to really consciously put your tools down and to like spend more time meditating, go to bed earlier, have a dream journal on your bedside table, like just to really be fully engaging with those energies as preparation for winter solstice.
Absolutely. And I
We
just,
open that chart, do you think? Or sorry, you go.
oh yeah, no, I just wanted, well, yeah, let's open that chart because I just wanted to speak to this 0 degrees of Cancer as well as we go into the chart of the winter solstice, which is marked by the sun ingressing into Cancer. So this is, and this is why these solstice points and the equinox points are astrological, like they're of the earth, but they're markers in the astrological world. Like it seems wild to me that not everybody knows this information. It's just like this is of the earth of what we live in. Anyway, that's a whole nother thing. But this 0 degree point is again so sensitive because what we will see next year and in the next couple of years is Neptune and Saturn moving into 0 degrees of Aries. Um, this is, and it will make a square to this point, right? So and just thinking of that Mercury and that Venus and the sun all moving through this 0 degrees of Cancer, again it comes up, and I feel like I'm repeating myself, but it just is so prominent in the chart of what is your dreaming for the change to come. What's the dreaming of the world that you want to see, and that's going to be changing, that is already changing so prominently and so strongly, but we're only getting the glimpses of this. But this is where we can use astrology to our benefit and live that new world, or that new timeline now in us now, because that's going to be the seeding for what's to come. And the more of us that are doing that, the more likely that this is going to be an easy transition or a very joyous one if we choose to choose it now. Like it's now that we get to choose this, not when it's actually happening. I feel that's going to be too late. It's now that we get to choose the good life now. And with
And
Venus and Mercury, the messenger, and Venus, the the such beauty and love, and what are the loving values here, of of the cardinal waters. It's very, very beautiful.
it's really special. And when we talk about the overculture as being so problematic, one of the reasons is because it skips this shit.
Mm.
Like our overculture skips the deep dreaming, it
Mm.
skips the deep rest, it skips the death cycle, it skips the part of the biological life cycle of the elderly, of the crone,
Mm.
like, and that's all these different, this is like the dark moon and new moon moment of the lunar cycle. It's like the seasonal equivalent of that. Like, this is all of the stuff our problematic overculture scoffs at and skips and demonizes and persecutes people for observing. And so the call to show up to this and to truly listen, to truly rest, to truly put weight on your dreams. Like, I dare you. I dare you to put real money on your dreams and on your dreaming at this time. That is radical for what our overculture tells us. And it's, yeah, this few days beforehand truly is
Mm.
such an opportunity to just like dip your toes in and get a feeling for what that is and prepare for this moment of winter solstice. And And the good news is too that winter solstice isn't just a hot second. Like, sure, it's marked by the longest night, this day in which there is the least amount of light and the lengthiest night.
Yes.
But winter solstice is also the mark of a larger seasonal moment. So this time, don't let me rush you, because that would be very anti-winter solstice and very naughty of me. But also, why not make the most of this moment? Like, I feel actually quite emotional and emphatic about this. Like, I think that this is really important. And we mentioned earlier on that some of our key themes for the month, that one of them was that deep rest and that restoration. Like, that's just a little blip and amongst a lot of the beautiful expansion and the crazy explosions and the what else. Like, this is a really lovely, beautiful moment. Please do
Mm.
lean into it and give yourself the gift of truly putting your tools down. Like, again, like, I don't want to use myself as an example too often, but this is, I think, the first time in my whole life that I'm taking an extended period of time off, because I know in my heart that I need to be in service to myself and my family first.
Mm.
And I'm not doing that, and I haven't done it for a long time. And so part of my deep winter solstice dreaming is, could this even be something I do every year? Like, every year, could I take 4, 6, or 8 weeks? Like, heaven forbid, like, could I take an extended bit of time off from a certain type of my work to really fully honor this moment? Like, can we? And again, like in Northern Hemisphere, this would be Christmas time, where we are all coming together and enjoying the warmth of the hearth and connecting and
Mm.
talking about, how the year has been and what we hope for in the year to
Mm.
come. Like, that's what this moment is. And because that doesn't line up with the consumer model of culture, we kind of have to invent our own way of connecting to that. And so maybe this looks like having a winter feast in your home and
Mm.
inviting some close friends or family. That's something I'm hoping to do this year.
Absolutely. And then also, I just want to reflect here during this time, the moon is in that beautiful Sagittarius place where the full moon has just been, when that Sagittarius full moon. So it's a full cycle since then. And God, that was beautiful. And I'm just thinking of, yeah, what does the elders say here in the void, at winter solstice? It's telling the stories to the children. It's celebrating what has happened and what's to come. It's for us and my family, we've been doing this for years, and this is feels pretty radical, but I think it's about teaching the children another way, or the way of the earth cycle, that we actually do our Christmas, we do our winter, we call it winter solstice. We have a tree, we sit by the fire, we have this ritual. We are fortunate enough, the kids go to a school where they do a lantern walk, a winter festival. They have a winter festival on winter solstice, on the Friday of winter solstice. And we do that, we go to the lantern walk, and it's cold, we have a fire, and we come home, and all of a sudden there's gifts under the tree, and we sit with hot chocolate and marshmallows, and the adults drink wine, and and we by the fire, and we give the gifts as a marker of what kind of setup do you want to seed for the next 12 months. And we start it by gift giving and giving thanks, and feasting and celebrating each other, and with abundance. And so what is the seed that you're planting here at winter solstice, that's going to set the tone for the rest of the cycle? This is the seed for the next 12 months. What is it? Remember the cardinal waters. It's something, in actual fact, the chart of the universe, the Theomundi, is a Cancer. It's a Cancer rising, and it is the beginning of everything. It comes from the mother, the cardinal waters. It's that first drip that comes down from the sky that moves into the creeks and into the river and into the ocean. This is the beginning of something else that starts that next 12 months. And again, the next 12 months, it's going to be big. It's big changes, big movements. A lot of things are happening. So how do you want to start off this year? how do you want to start off this year? Is it surrounded by friends and family? And thinking also, this is in the lead up to the full moon as well. So this is a prayer that's coming into full illumination under that Capricorn full moon that's going to happen in like just a day or so. Was it 22nd? So this is within that full moon prayer stage as well. So it's like a double dose of wishing and praying and spell crafting of how you want to see the next 12 months to come, this planting of seeds. Yeah, I highly recommend like, yeah, doing something that nourishes you and your family and your loved ones deeply, to set that foundation for the next 12 months, because it will serve you very, very well, I think. What are the roots that you're putting into the ground at this time for the tree to grow?
And if I may, for those of us who feel like that's not available to them, who feel like that isn't an active part of their life and don't quite know how or where to connect with that, then this is your opportunity to dream it and plant it for the years to come. It doesn't always have to look like just thinking of, like, even though it's not Christmas time, just thinking about how Christmas can be also like, it's so beautiful. And I am so lucky to have lived with Yvonne and her gorgeous family for a couple of years back in 2018, 19, and I have witnessed the beauty of that celebration. And it's a big part of how I've been inspired to bring that into my own home with my own family. And for those of us who crave it but don't have it, dream into it now. And also remember, your chosen family are family too. Like, it could be your friends, it could be extended family, whatever it is. There's just such a dreaming potential here. And like you said, Yvonne, that moon is so close to full. It's only a day away from being full. So it's a very enlivening, it's really bringing energy and manifesting potential to this moment.
Absolutely. It's a very, very, very powerful
There's a
moment.
flower for me.
Talking about
Oh,
see? Very powerful moment.
speaking of manifesting powerful moments.
Absolutely. And if you're signed up to our Patreon, if you haven't, I would highly recommend it. We will put something up at winter solstice with a few suggestions on how you can honor this moment in time, and yeah, dream the good dreams. But remember, it's what's within is without. So if you're dreaming something good for yourself, you're doing it for all of us. So, it's actually a collective, radical act of collective, it's a collective activism by doing,
Mm.
dreaming the good dreams. Like this is a part
Yeah.
of that change of the consciousness that's happening. And how do you want, what kind of world do you want to live in? Yeah.
Yeah, like what better world we would have if all of us were able to connect with this in a loving, conscious, and
Mhm.
thoughtful way. And like, look at this, the full illumination of the manifesting of a beautiful moment. And here's my little human to gift that to us and to show it in action of like, don't think for a second that this isn't a revolutionary act to welcome the seasons into your home. Like, it's become a revolutionary act. It's a thing of great importance and great beauty.
Yep.
What
Full
a
moon.
delight that girl is. Full moon in Capricorn. Let's see. So the full moon in Capricorn is the 22nd of June, so the following day at 11:08 a.m. AEST at 1 degree of Capricorn.
I've
And
got
so
the
you go.
Yeah, no, again, there's 1 degree mark. So it's just highlighting how important these, the sensitivity of the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 degrees, these are sensitive markers in time. And this full illumination of this point, just so close to, Venus here. We've just had the Venus and Mercury conjunction as well, which feels beautiful in itself. Um, yeah, yeah, this cardinal full moon, cardinal Earth. What are you bringing to the new Earth at winter solstice? This is a new earth time, because it is a new earth, it's new earth cycle. So this feels very potent to have a full moon on winter solstice. It feels so lovely and so special. I really love this full moon, and I sort of, in the back of my head, I already know I've got plans for this weekend, and it already feels really delicious. It feels great.
I think so. And like, I sometimes feel a little bit sad for Capricorn, and I have a Capricorn sun. I think that for all of the beautiful things that like because the Capricorn part of its archetype is that patriarchal is the patriarchy, that like that actually isn't supposed to be a dirty word. It's only because our culture and the powers that be
Mm,
have made it one. And I feel like this full moon is an invitation into dreaming. What does Capricorn look like when it's healed? What
mm,
does that look like when it is in service to all? And so perhaps there is an opportunity here to fully illuminate not just the downfall, but the beauty of that area of the zodiac, which is about its cardinal earth. It's the mountain goat. It's the sure-footed mountain goat, able to precariously but comfortably balance and make its way to the peak of the mountain. And then when we think too of the even though it's a mountain goat, it's actually a mountain goat with a fish's tail. And so
mm,
it's also the capacity to reach great depths. Like there's a real scope that Capricorn holds there. And when we are no longer tricked about what is possible or what is impossible,
mm,
suddenly the healed Capricorn becomes available to us, because we can really see and connect with just what we could create if we no longer disbelieved in ourselves or disbelieved what was allowed or not allowed or whatever. And so there's and Neptune at holding this point of rebirth at the end of
mm.
Pisces there is squaring, is in that square aspect with the sun and moon at this time. So it really is like, do we dare dream a better Capricorn story? Like, can we dream, can we sing up a song of Capricorn that that makes ambition a beautiful moment and not the only thing we have in our lives? Like, yeah, how can we relate to that differently?
Absolutely. And I'm just looking at, from Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces, as Rebecca said earlier, they're the collective signs, and Sagittarius, just talking about sort of from Scorpio, from the depths of transformation, you go out to the stars in Sagittarius to get the grand ideas, get the, the big insights. But in Capricorn, we bring it back down to the earth, and make this new structures, ruled by Saturn, the new structures to move forward. What are the foundations here of the new earth that we're planting at this time? Especially as that square is happening to Neptune, is like, do we dare to dream good dreams, new structures for this new earth that we are cultivating, dreaming in? And I think this carries on to what we were saying before about, dream the good dreams as a radical act. And in this full moon, like, this is bringing the structural foundations of a new earth consciousness for the collective, because it is a collective sign, to move forward when these changes are happening, like we're in it. And this feels like this carry on of what we were saying before, of dare to dream big, and to create something new here in this cardinal earth sign under this full moon. And 1 degree too, like, this is early, this is the beginning of the new structures, like the very beginning of the new structures. It feels very powerful.
Actually right where my sun is. I didn't realize until just now that that is a full moon exactly on my natal sun. So I'm really
Nice.
glad I've taken some time off to really feel that and let that sink in. I will report back next month to let you know how that went for
Excellent,
me.
please do.
You ready to have a look at the next one?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay. So we have Mercury trining Saturn on the 27th of June, 2024 at 4:07 a.m. AEST. And look, I think that while that's not necessarily a like super impactful transit, it marks the beginning of a series of trines that are going to start happening that bring in a more supportive conversation with Saturn. And so while the Sun, Venus, and Mercury have been moving through the middle of Gemini, in May, we have that square aspect with Saturn, which was more contentious and more like Saturn saying, I think things need to be done this way. And the other three planets are going, no, it's my way. And there's that tug, that kind of pushing and pulling and figuring out like, well, how do we integrate what really needs to happen here? Whereas here, what we start to see, and with Mercury kicking us off, is a more supportive conversation as we come into the fruition of these cycles. And so Mercury and Saturn are beginning to have perhaps a conversation with less swearing at each other over what's going to happen to go forward, that supports the view and the hope for both Mercury and Saturn.
And this is really interesting too, because a couple of days later, this Saturn stations retrograde. So it's not moving at all. Like it's really just bearing down on this 19, 20-degree point, which is what which is where the Pisces new moon was back in March. So there's something here that's really important that's been brought up to show us. I just I'm trying to sit with. I'm still in the new moon and the full moon actually, because I'm feeling there's actually not that much happens between the full moon on the 22nd of June to now. So there feels like an incubation period that happens in between that week, and we get to this point and we're seeing, I guess, the what does Saturn have to say before it goes back? It's like it's come this far. Now it's having another conversation, but something different to where Mercury and Venus and the Sun were last time in Gemini, which was the start of May, June, look, June. And now it's like a month later, and we're sort of sitting with that, just going, oh, so that's what you needed to show us. Okay, now just this something Saturn is showing us something here that we needed to know that we didn't have access to earlier because it was, too chaotic or, lots of movement or moving too fast. We've now sitting back into that Cancerian waters of just it just feels like incubation, and Saturn's just going, well, here you go. This is what you need before I go back.
And I think that particularly like Saturn being 2 or 3 days before it retrogrades, like, yeah, that hasn't moved and is not going anywhere for at least another couple of weeks. And I loved what you said, Eve, on like the bearing down. Like, even though the trine is a supportive aspect, like Saturn is not flinching and is completely unapologetic in whatever its ask is here. And I think that it's one of our teachers, Austin Coppock, will describe a stationing planet as getting up on a soapbox and having something important to say. And so, like, what does Saturn have to say here, in which everyone else has no choice but to honor through listening? That's part of what that stationing moment means. And yeah, it's a couple of days from now, but honestly, it's as good as happening at, a couple of days beforehand. And so even though this is a supportive aspect, it feels like Saturn has some non-negotiable terms on how the Sun, Venus, and Mercury are going to proceed into the rest of this cycle with Saturn. And considering that the next aspect they will have will be the opposition when Sun, Venus, Mercury are in Virgo in a couple of months, this is setting the scene for the next couple of months when things will be fully illuminated, and like the harvest of it is really beginning at that point. So what needs to happen now that, like, yes, is supportive and in service to a better harvest, but what potentially like heavier contractive points are going to be non-negotiable?
Yeah. And I just wanted to, and this might hold a clue as to what this might mean. And this is leading into that station retrograde for Saturn. But Saturn is here at 19 degrees and 23 minutes. So we take it up to the next full degree, which is 20 degrees Pisces, which is where, as I said, the new moon was in Pisces back in March. But there's a thing called Sabian symbols that they're channeled points, and at 20 degrees Pisces, the channeled point is for here, nourish both body and soul. And it calls for, it says, a table set for an evening meal. And it feels like this Saturn is saying, because it's connected back to this Pisces, this Cancerian energy in a harmonious way. It's like, take care of the nourishment that you're sitting here with. Look around you, who's here? Really see the gifts that we're being provided, see who's around you, nourish yourself to look after yourself, and deep rest, especially in these early phases of this new cycle, this new winter cycle. This is going in deeper into winter. And what are we dreaming here of deep nourishment at our table? Especially with all these, with Mercury, Venus, and the Sun here in Cancer, cardinal waters. How are we being nourished? How are we nourishing our body? How are we resting and dreaming? Saturn in Pisces is, time and dreaming of something new, but the space in between, the void, but it's bringing structure to the dreaming. And how do we do that? By nourishing ourselves, by actually resting in the first place. Like rest, actually doing the act of resting is a structure that supports that dreaming.
I love that so much. And I
Mm.
think too, like what I felt really strongly was like a table laid out of people gathered around for food, but that the maybe the people are our elders, maybe they're our ancestors, like bringing in that Saturnian component of time and of the wisdom that can only come with age. Like, is that a, a moment that is nourished through its maturity and through
Mm.
its seriousness, like it's serious nourishment. And it just makes me wonder if is there something around really bringing in the wisdom of our elders or the wisdom of our ancestors at that time as well, especially because it's in Pisces.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you're saying, I'm just thinking of the importance of sitting around for an evening meal with your family and your loved ones, talking about your day, and getting the nourishment is just being cooked up from your garden or whatever, and to sit and enjoy a meal while nourishing yourself, but also hearing the stories of everybody's day, and just such an important ritual to bring everybody back together. Because in the morning everybody disperses and goes to school and goes to work and does the things, and that evening meal is everybody coming back together and hearing the wisdom of what everybody learned and what was their favorite part of the day, and what that's really important. And I think this is going to be highlighted at this time at the end of June, is coming back and to hear the stories of what everybody's experiences are, so we can learn for new stories or how we want to proceed going forward.
Yeah, I think let's open the Saturn retrograde chart.
Mm.
Do you think? Because I can
Yeah,
feel
yeah,
that
absolutely.
already. That's yeah, that is that story as well. And so this is on the 30th of June 2024. It's on a Sunday at 5:07 a.m. AEST. And so we can see Saturn at 19 degrees and 25 minutes of Pisces stationing retrograde. And I cannot emphasize what a phenomenal thing this is, that for those of us within the Australian Eastern time zone,
Mm.
that this is Saturn is exactly at the uppermost point of the sky when this has happened. It is exactly conjunct the midheaven as it is stationing retrograde. And so The midheaven, yeah, it's a place of prominence. It's a place of great importance. It's something that we look up to and aspire to. And so I feel like this is a real moment of reverence for everything that Saturn brings. And Saturn has something to say here. And because that's the signification of the direct of the oh, I keep going to say that of the retrograde station. But in this particular portion of the earth where that's happening right on top of us like that, and for those of us in similar time zones, it will be close and it'll be happening over the day. It's just
Mm.
amazing to see that so directly like that in that moment.
Yeah, it's really, really special. You know, like I see the MC as the branches of the tree stretching out, and opposite to that are the roots. And so, like Saturn on this at this time in this land in Australia, you know, it's shining back down to the roots of where Saturn loves. You know, it is the foundations of the structures that Saturn provides. And so what are we learning from above to bring down below? You know, as above as below, as within as without. And so feeling that and seeing those reflections of, oh, I see that out there, you know, and so do you like what you're seeing? Well, now it's time to go back and change it. You know, this is the retrograde. This is what retrograde's all about. It is the reviewing, the revising, the retelling. Like this is the opportunity to see if we're not liking what we're seeing above or around us and outside of us, calling back down to change the roots of it and to go, well, that didn't serve and that doesn't serve, and maybe I need to do more of this. And this is what I think too, what we're being called to do. So when Saturn does go direct again, I think it's October. You should have looked that up to have it on my hand. We'll put it in the
Mm.
notes. Um,
It was November.
oh, November. Yeah, I knew it was around, yeah, that time. So it's that then it will come back to this place again. It will be much more wiser and knowing and more sure of itself as it comes back. But this feels like a finishing off with a story that is unfolding.
Yeah, and so whatever comes up here will be something to be slowly unraveled and worked through and sort of dug through, ready to be pieced back together
Mm,
later in the year. So
yeah.
just keep, as we do when we're listening for Astrological, Queen of the Underworld, we put our ear to the great below and
Mm.
just listen to what is starting to come up there. It's not all going to be available for understanding now, but the beginning of Saturn's retrograde story is coming up out of the ocean, actually, in Pisces now. And what does this moment of being on the soapbox, what does that highlight or say to you? And what are you being called to press your ear against and to listen more closely to over this next few months of the retrograde, ready to, yes, piece it together and move forward differently at the end of the year?
Absolutely. And just thinking ahead of what's to come while Saturn is in its retrograde, there's some pretty big transits that have that Saturn has some big conversations, especially with Jupiter in mid-August, that are pretty profound. And so this feels like, if we were to say, this feels like another story starting to unfold and to start to, yeah, listen to what is being shown to you at this time feels significant. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
very
feels like a
much.
beginning of a new story.
Yes. Yeah, it's a big way to end the month, but it feels really in alignment with that winter solstice vibe. Like if you have been having that deep rest and that deep nourishment,
Mm,
you'll be and like to just feel your body gentled and slowed, you will
mm.
be well poised to receive this story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, and especially, you know, this last, you know, we're now sort of moving into that Imbolc energy here in the Southern Hemisphere, which is the dreaming of something new. So that deep listening and that deep nourishment that we're called to at winter solstice is like, this is the time to do it in preparation for the new cycle that's beginning. Mm.
Very much so.
Yay.
And so some of the things that we will be, well, that's the end of today's episode, I guess. That's all
Yes,
of the charts that we have to look at. And so some of the things that we will be looking at for the month of July include that Neptune is also stationing direct just 2 days later on like July 2nd. So
makes
that
it
will
even more profound, doesn't it?
really does, especially in terms of how winter solstice is truly the preparation, like that dreaming is the preparation. And because Saturn and Neptune are just, they're in cahoots over this next couple of years. So this is a real potent moment, but we'll talk about that for the July episode. Um, and
Mars conjunct Uranus is coming up too in July.
Yeah, and we'll start to see some progression in the eclipse stories as well, because the sun is meeting the halfway point between the nodal points and forming a square. And it's an opportunity, again, it's a point of tension and pivoting that is happening in the eclipse story. So we'll be able to look at that in July as well.
Yeah, so lots coming up.
Mm.
Lots coming up. So, thank you for listening. It's been fun. This has been really cool. I really enjoyed this. Thank you, Beck.
Oh, thank you. This is so beautiful. Like I love that we get to do this and share it with everyone, but I
Mm.
just feel prepared for June now.
Me too.
Yeah,
I
it
hope
kind
that's
of
what
sorted
everybody else
everything
is
out.
feeling out there, that they can go, okay,
Yeah.
now we can go into June feeling well equipped and we know what tools that we need. We're ready.
Absolutely. And look, please do drop your experiences of our episode in the comments or at our Patreon, but also just drop in some experiences of your own astrological
Mm,
unfoldings. Like if you're really noticing some of the things that we're talking about, or you get to that full moon and you're like, wow, that was really on point. We'd love to hear that. It's a beautiful
absolutely.
way to sing each other up, but also to share and learn how astrology comes through for different people. So please do connect with us and chat, leave comments. But really, the main place to find us is at patreon.com/the Sentient Sky. We are building a community there in a co-created space. So please do check it out. You can follow us for free. And we do have tiers to subscribe to support us in this work as
Yeah,
well.
and if you're signing up as a paid Patreon, you will get this, all the transits on a worksheet that you can work through to make it more personalized for your chart, as well as those on the higher tier also get discounts to our astrological workshops and all sorts of things. But if you're listening to this on YouTube, put a comment, make a like, share it if you like what you're hearing. Share it so we can get more out there, and so people can benefit from what we've just experienced to know that, yeah, now we can go into June knowing what tools that we need and feel more equipped. And how awesome would it be that more and more people throughout our communities are feeling this way, so we can all move through these big changes together in a more gentle and easeful ways. And if I was to think about why we do this, I really think if we come down to the cracks of it, this is why. It's for the collective gentleness to knowing that these big changes are here and upon our doorstep, that the more of us who know of it, and we can all move through it in with grace and ease. I think that would be the good spell that we would put out there.
Yeah, for sure. And look, by joining our Patreon from the second tier and above, I also offer an electional chart every month, which is just a really poignant moment to connect with a particular planet or energy that has been specifically formulated and aligned for that purpose. And yeah, if you're listening to this and you are one of our Patreons, thank you so, so, so much. It
Yay!
really is just such a blessing to have you supporting us and creating this community with us. But
Such an
also
honor.
it is, isn't it?
Mm.
And look, with Yvonne's workbooks, if you've got that in front of you while you're listening to
Yeah,
this, like that's next level. You can take little notes and things as you go.
so
Um,
cool.
what do you have going on at the moment?
Ah, yes, I'm busy, busy, busy. As I said, Mars is in my 10th house at the moment in Aries, so it's all happening. I feel like I have lots of tabs open and lots of things to do. So, the first off, I want to speak to Anana. So, every 6 months, I run along with my dear sister, friend, Ali Riverstar, And we take a group of people down through a big ritual of 5 months through the underworld, following the myth of Inanna. So it's invoking Inanna, a journey through the underworld. It's very powerful. That's online and to face-to-face. But if you're from interstate or international, we can always work around that. We had 2 interstate women this time, and it was so delicious. And they got a lot out of it anyway, regardless. They couldn't be here face-to-face. So that is starting on the 17th of June. And then just looking at what we spoke about the 17th of June, that's looking pretty friggin' delicious. So good. I have the Temple of New Wheat, which is an astrological study group. So we're starting a new round of that starting in late June, early July. So that is pretty awesome. A very powerful community where we share our new moon and full moon prayers, connected back to our charts, and there's a circle every month, and it's a very dynamic, amazing community of people all talking astrological yumminess, and that's catered for the beginner to intermediate and also advanced. So that is very delicious. And also the one-on-one shamanic counseling, and obviously astrological readings. Lots happening.
Amazing. So
Yay.
much is happening. We are polar opposites right now, because I'm just about to take a break from my one-on-one sessions. Like I said, that I took maternity leave, but that's not a break. I've never taken a break like this before. So basically from winter solstice for 2 months, I won't be available for any sessions, and I'm taking a term off from my astrology and tarot circles, my classes that I run, which is feeling really, really good, because I'm looking forward to being able to come back with a full cup and being able to offer of myself more deeply. But I also hope that role models, and that this is like reaching the right people who need to hear that it can be done. It doesn't have to look like 8 weeks, but that's what I'm doing. So if you no, never mind. So what I will be continuing on with, though, is that I do have some products that are going to be uploaded to my website soon at rebeccaholly.com.au/shop, including a hawthorn berry elixir and a cogness elixir, which has spearmint, gotu kola, and lemon balm, which is so delicious and yummy. I'll have fire cider pre-orders up soon. But under the recent full moon in Sag that we had with Jupiter Venus, I did a full moon working, and I have some really, really special, fucking potent full moon materia that I'll be putting up over the next month or so as well. And that includes a full moon essence, ritual bath salts, anointing oils, mugwort dreaming pouches, room sprays, body butter, all of this stuff that sat on an altar under that full moon. And I've tried a little bit of it, and it really is just illuminating and gorgeous. I can't wait to share that with you.
Delicious. Amazing.
This has been so wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for listening. Thank you for going through this epicness of what June will be and for staying this long. Such an honor. It really is to do this work and to deliver this gifting from our wisdom and understanding, and from all our teachers who work through us and speak to us as well. I thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing you for the next episode for the July forecast.
Yay.
See
Take
you
care.
soon.
Happy winter solstice.
Happy winter solstice.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to The Sentient Sky. Follow us on Patreon at www.patreon.com/thesentientsky for episode updates, our contact info, events and offerings, and to connect with us in our co-created community. Thank you so much to each and every patron for their support and presence within that community.
Deep gratitude to our ancestors, guides, and to the green world of the earth and the cosmic sky. May we ever be acting in service to the highest good of all beings. We pay our deepest respect to the First Nations people and to the elders past, present and emerging, to the Wadawurrung and the Jurja Wadawurrung country people. We give great thanks to the continuing connection to the land, sky, sea and their communities. We also like to express our deepest of gratitudes to our own ancestors and to the land, sea, and sky of their origins. Both of us would like to thank our teachers, families, friends, and communities that support us and inspire us in this cosmic work. Especially big love to our beautiful children for whom this is ultimately for.
Great thanks to my brother, Daniel Van Horsen, for allowing us to use his original music, whom you can find on Facebook for details on his offerings as a session musician and sound engineer. Until next time, see you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Much love. Bye.